Welcome to Kit Catastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Voyager Class Constructicon Rampage. This figure came out in 2019 as part of Wave 6 of the Voyager assortment, and represents Rampage's appearance in the 2009 film Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. This figure is simultaneously the largest and most screen-accurate Rampage figure produced thus far, due in part to being red as he appeared in the movie, as opposed to the usual yellow of his merchandise. Ironically, the bulldozer that combined to form Devastator in the film was yellow, but we'll get into that later. Rampage here turns into a big and hefty analog of his on-screen bulldozer form, which is presumably similar to a Komatsu D575A if we're going off of his original deluxe class figure from 2009. Whatever the case, this thing is huge. You could probably bash someone's brains in with this bulldozer if you tried hard enough. The giant plow on the front is impressive in its stature and in its metallic silver sheen, and the treads are wonderfully sculpted, with many of its internal mechanisms illuminated with the aforementioned adornment of silver. This thing's pretty damn gappy though, with two major voids, one that runs straight through near the front, and one between the treads at the back. I do appreciate the inclusion of the rippers at the rear, though they aren't as impressive as the original deluxes. Right off the bat, the transformation requires a little bit of parts forming. Opening up the treads allows you to remove a four-pointed platform, which will become useful later. From there, the transformation is actually very complex. Don't be too discouraged though, as most of the work is done on the arms, with the body doing a pretty straightforward straightening. The instructions aren't very helpful for a first-time experience, so the process will eventually become a whole lot easier and clearer the more you transform this guy back and forth, which can become addicting. The one gripe I have involves Rampage going back into bulldozer mode. When swiveling his forefinger back into place on the tread assembly, there's no clear point to keep it in order to tab it into the main body, meaning you have to futz with it quite a bit to align everything. It's a minor complaint, but it's what annoys me the most about the scheme. Anyway, once everything's in place, simply peg Rampage's monopod onto the platform from earlier. Rampage's robot mode is by far the most screen-accurate rendition of his on-screen model by far. Sadly, it doesn't quite capture the corkscrew aesthetic of his fused leg, which I adored, but it does feature very nice lines going up his body. I may be in the minority when I say this, but Revenge of the Fallen was a very great time for Transformers designs, since the concept artist pulled all the stops to bring us some very experimental, non-humanoid alien designs, and Rampage is no exception. Some may find the blade and canopy just resting on his back as some egregious kibble, but considering the last time Hashtag tried tackling this design, they chickened out and went for a crab centaur man. I can forgive it. I do have one major problem with the design though. The treads can't rotate or swivel or even reattach themselves so that he can wield them as whips like he did in the film. The best they can do is just dangle helplessly off to the sides, which is really disappointing. Okay, time for a story. So for every video I make, I consult TF Wiki to make sure I'm not leaving out any details about the figures I review. You'd be surprised to find out how much I learned just from that. And it mentioned that Rampage comes with two tiny guns. Now I didn't see anything in the packaging, so I figured I must have thrown them out with a plastic tray. But then I started watching other reviews of him, especially MGO's, and I didn't see any mention of weapons there. So I just thought I was shit out of luck. But I was messing around with Rampage in tank mode, and managed to pull off one of the hydraulic rods near the blade. Lo and behold, it's the gun! Neither the packaging nor the instructions actually mention this, so it took me by surprise. Anyway, the guns themselves are actually criminally puny in Rampage's hands, so it's probably for the best if you just leave them on his body. And of course, Rampage also comes with a cardboard stand titled Pyramid Desert Battle, which portrays the third act of the Revenge of the Fallen film. Rampage's articulation is actually not that great. He has a ball-jointed head that only has good range on the up and down and tilting axes, but the joint is connected to a gray rod that can pivot side to side, which took me by surprise. The shoulders are actually wonderfully jointed, with impressive range on the forward and outward axes, along with an insane butterfly joint due to transformation. All three of his fingers have two joints each, one at the base and one at a knuckle. But he lacks elbows. Admittedly, I can't figure out how he would even have elbows given his transformation, but it's still disappointing and quite limiting. He has a waist swivel that can rotate 360 degrees in theory, but gets caught on rogue geometry in most angles. He also has 2 joints in his quote-unquote abdomen, one below and one above the swivel. The one below is a ratchet, while the upper is pinned. This can easily change his hunched angle, or make it so that he looks like he's about to spring upon an unsuspecting Sam Witwicky. Still, the lack of elbows and the stunted tread position just sap Rampage out of so many cool posing options. Rampage has one last trick up his sleeve. He can turn into a leg! This conversion scheme is actually pretty similar to going back into bulldozer mode, albeit with a few unforeseen engineering techniques. The way the thumb assemblies rotate around on the arm took me by surprise and do wonders to change the shape of the treads to better fit the limb mode. Sadly, the stand cannot be integrated into the limb mode. All that's left to do is to throw the cab section back and await the remaining members of Devastator. Number 15. Studio Series Foot Fungus. The last thing you want in your Transformers figure is someone else's foot fungus, but as it turns out, that might just be what you get. This limb mode looks pretty good, though I can't really say much about it without the greater context of being combined with the other 6 Constructicons as of this recording. All I can say right now is hot damn, Devastator is gonna be big. Studio Series Rampage isn't that great a figure, but he surely does not exist in a vacuum. If you're going to get this guy, you're most likely going for the full set of 7, so my recommendation will be based on the greater context of being part of quite possibly the most ambitious combiner in all of Transformers history thus far. Rampage is definitely worth a pickup in that case. He is a very good introduction to the Constructicons, and it makes me very excited to see what comes next. This has been Katastrophe. It's time to transform and roll out.